this has taken so long, but it was still there and it happened. Let's just say the probability of this happening was as much as the probability of RCB winning the IPL title. Well, I'm talking about a conversation with Harsha Bhogle.
So you're suggesting RCB could win it this year?
I'm talking about the one that happened already, the women's IPL.
The women's one was fantastic.
Okay, so let's cut to the start, as they say.
Okay.
How does broadcasting for a game look like? How does the whole flow happen?
It is an engineering marvel. The commentary team is the icing on the cake. I've used this parallel before.
Yes.
That the cake has been baked by somebody else. If there is no commentary, you can still watch the telecast. But if there is no engineering, there is no telecast. And the miles of cables that are laid out, the work that the camera crew and the VT crew and the stats crew puts in, you get the feeling that what we do is a party. It's a discipline that I put on myself, that I try and always remind myself that somebody else is working much harder on the crew to allow you to look like this cool guy who's in control all the time. So we are the icing on the cake. Cake looks terrible without the icing, I agree, but you don't only buy icing.
So if I'm watching a cricket game, there are two commentators.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Who does what?
There is a caller, and the caller will call. And then there is a summarizer. Increasingly, we have three these days. And the lines are blurring.
Can you give me an example of calling, summarizing, and the third is?
Yeah. So for example, there is, say, Kuldeep's bowling to maybe a Joe Root, or he's bowling to a Stokes. And I'll call the action. I'll say Stokes didn't read the wrong one. He's trapped in front. I pause because I've called the action. I've told people what happened in hopefully as interesting a way as possible. And then why it happened, why did Stokes not read it out of the hand or whatever, that is the call of the summarizer who's been there, done it before. So the roles are clearly demarcated, and it works best when the roles are demarcated like that. Now, sometimes the expert might be offering a point of view and suddenly something happens on the ground. I'm absolutely fine if they keep going and call the action. So sometimes they blur, but it's best if they are demarcated. So in my case, it's easier because I set limits on myself. There are parts that I cannot go to because I don't have the bandwidth to. Even if I have the bandwidth, I don't have the CV to justify doing that. So in my case, it's a lot easier. But if you play 100 tests and you're a caller, and then people suddenly say, but why are you asking someone? You know it yourself, right? So but I'd like it to go back to how it is in the football model.
Which is?
Where there's a clear caller and there's a clear expert. And the caller calls, the expert explains.
How do you go about preparing for a game?
At the start of a series, a little bit more. At the start of a test match, a little bit more. Much more before day one of a test match. I probably have 2 or 3 pages of notes. The stats person would have sent you a stats pack for the day that will give you ground stats.
So you get a docket every day.
Yeah, you get a docket every day.
And one before the series as well about what are the important
but
things.
You get 2 kinds of dockets these days. There's someone like Mohandas Menon, for example, who's the perfect all-time great test match cricket commentary stats person. And there is increasingly the analytics person who will tell you, for example, that when Bumrah's bowling fifth stump line to Joe Root, this is what has tended to happen over the past. So you know why. You bring that up only when Root comes into bat, Bumrah's immediately pressed in, then you know why that has happened. You already have those numbers with you, so you've got to have read that before. Sometimes the producer will prompt you in your ear, but the producer's got lots on his or her head. So suppose there's a wicket and Root's coming out. I'll suddenly have what Mohan has already given me, Root's average against spin bowling in the last 2 years. So I've got that in front of me, so I can relate to that. So I'll carry that with me every time.
So how much of what is said is a function of the stats, the analytics team? How much of that is your own gut?
When there was lesser cricket, you remembered that much more. But now there's a game that comes every day. But yes, you do remember. And sometimes you actually then tell the producer, can I get that out? I remember this spell Bumrah bowled in Visakhapatnam, one of the great spells by a fast bowler you'll ever see. And I'll say, I remember he troubled this batter a lot. So do you have a little bit of that? And so they'll put that out. So I've asked for it. The producer will tell me it's ready. And only then will I start leading to it.
So let's break it down to the bits and pieces of broadcast. Here I am. In front of me is the video monitor of the game which is happening.
Yes.
In my ear, the producer is speaking
Yes.
about things which are ready or things which have to happen. Then I have my co-commentators, and I have the stats
Yes.
team right next to me.
Correct.
Then there is a
And you have you have a director in your ear and the producer.
Yes.
And you have someone who's calling you down to the breaks. Because we are not a subscription driven model, we are an advertising driven model. There will be an ad after every over, especially in T20 cricket. So there's pressure to go off as quickly as possible. Then you have a count in your ear saying world is back, Star or Geo not yet. Then there'll be another count saying, okay, everybody back. So you've got these counts constantly in your ear, so you've got to keep playing those counts.
How do you practice?
No, it becomes, you get used to it. I mean, fighter pilots fly MiGs, right? This is a lot easier than that. So you get used to it. What you learn is never start a story on the fifth ball. Never ask your expert for a considered comment on the fifth ball.
How much of that is prepared, and how well in advance is that
So
prepared?
so let me see. I've actually got a rundown for you of the first 10 minutes.
Wow.
And I'll give you an idea. This is a rundown from Dharamshala.
Okay.
So I'm typically always assigned to do the first 10 minutes. After you go off the opening titles, I've already recorded the opener in the morning, which the producer has written.
Okay.
So I've recorded the opener. The opener comes out. That is my cue now that it's coming. But I'm hearing in my ear 3, 2, 1, and then suddenly the opening titles are over. The animation starts. So it says map animation and zoom to ground 20 seconds. So that is telling you where all the series has happened. And then you come to Dharamshala for the last test. So I know we've gone Hyderabad, Visakhapatnam, Rajkot, Ranchi to Dharamshala. And then there's a drone shot. If it's ground like Dharamshala, then the drone shot romances the surroundings. Otherwise, it sort of sets it up. And then you come to the locator. So I cannot say, here we are on the third day of this test match, because I know 20 seconds later, there's going to be a graphic of that. So I've got to build up something for that 20 seconder. It's got to be crisp, but it's also got to be energy. Suppose you're tuning on 10 minutes before, and you've got someone there's not enough energy, who's stumbling over words, and you're saying, so you've got to have the energy. You've got to be precise. So I never write down my lines for the opener, but I know approximately what I'm going to say on the first line. And I've made notes for what I'm going to say at each point. Because once you get to the match locator, there's crowd shots and there's a match summary. Then we go to the highlights of the previous day. On this one, for example, there's Rohit Sharma's package from the previous day, the Shubman Gill's package from the previous day, the Sarfraz, Bashir, whatever. So that runs 20 seconds without a commentary. So I've got to fill those, but not fill everything, because you also want to just in silence watch Rohit Sharma play that great shot, or watch Sarfaraz play that cheeky shot. So you do that, and then it comes down to pitch hoover and key players. We don't have time for the entire pitch report. So they will show a moving camera across the pitch. It's only about 10 or 12 seconds. So before that, I would have asked the person who's done the pitch report. I have to listen to the pitch report early.
Right.
And I've asked the person, if I have one line, is it okay if I say this line? And they say, yeah, that's okay. So I'll say, yeah, third day, but the track hasn't changed very much. That's all I need to say. So I'll say, this is what the surface looks like. Day 3, this is typically what happens in day 3. But Graham Swan and Sanjay did the pitch report, and they think that it's not changed very much. But I've got to end it in that much time. I cannot go beyond that. And then it'll go to key players. This is the interesting bit, because now today, my producer said key players are Crawley, Duckett and Root, Kuldeep, Bumrah and Ashwin. It's the third day in Dharamshala. You've got about 7-8 seconds on each. So I've got to have prepped stats. I've got to have prepped numbers. So suddenly Crawley will come on, and I'll probably say lots of 60s, 70s. He hasn't converted it to 100. England will want that today. That's it, because by now it's gone on to Duckett. On Duckett, I've got to be ready to say, right, he's got 100 in the series, but not too much more. Ashwin versus Duckett should be a good contest today. Let's move on. Joe Root, he's played in 2 different styles. What style are we going to see from Root? Then you come on to Bumrah, Ashwin. So you've got to have numbers. You've got to say Kuldeep's got 18 wickets. He's in good control. And just set up why these 3 are the key players. And then I'll start to get a count in my ear saying Gio's about to leave us, or Star is about to leave us. So I've got to just taper that off, wait for it to go. But now I've got 20 seconds left. I can't get Gavaskar and Swan on in those 20 seconds, because when Gio comes back, they can't already be there. So then you fill for those 20 seconds. I'll get a count in my ear saying 5, 3, 2, 1, Gio's back. Then I'll say, very good morning, everyone. Gavaskar's with me. Grab Swan's with me. What do you think? And that is 1 minute before play starts, so that you've heard what the experts have to say. But the ball by ball man, the caller, is armed with the responsibility of hitting every part so that you're not having to drop anything last minute. And that's how it begins. So I don't know if I've made it look like it's some wow thing. But
No, it is quite a wow thing because you make it look extremely magical because it seems so seamless, so to say.
Yes.
But it is no different from a batter hitting a perfect ball into the perfect spot at the perfect
Yeah,
time.
but the only
and
difference
sound,
is if the batter gets an edge, he's gone for the day. If I make a mistake, I'm still around. I can
Let's
recover and
talk
yeah.
about the mistakes.
There are many mistakes.
Eh,
On an average, you'll make 5 or 6 mistakes a day, at least. At least 5 or 6 mistakes a day, because we're not human. We will make a mistake. So, for example, the monitors are nowhere near the kind of monitors you're at home, right? You got
Yeah.
a 60 and 75-inch TV at home, suppose, or even a 42-inch TV at home, and you're watching it there, and there's silence around you. You're hearing. When we're doing commentary, there's a small monitor, and did I hear two sounds? But there's also someone else talking. So you might say, I heard two sounds. And then the replay, you just hear tuck, gone. Where was the second sound from? So you will make those mistakes. Or when you do commentary, you're watching the monitor and you're watching the action. So you can't have one eye here, one eye here. So on an instinct, you'll say, okay, this game I'm doing off here. Now, especially in T20 cricket, you've played the sweep shot, boom. Where's the ball gone? Has the ball gone mid-wicket? Has the ball gone square? Your instinct is that the ball's gone behind square. Has it gone mid-wicket? By the time you look up, you can't always spot the ball. But if you look up, there'll be a little bat pad, which you cannot see when you're looking up. So it comes with experience.
So-
We do at least 5 or 6 mistakes a day.
Batters say when they're timing the ball correctly, they are in form. There are certain shots that they're hitting, they are in form. How do you define whether you're in form or you're not in form?
There is no greater joy than when you say, pitched outside off. When someone's appealed and you say, no, that's pitched outside off. And then suddenly you're thinking, oh, did it? Because now they've gone into a review and there's the mat appearing. And then when it pitches outside off, you say, I got that right. You feel good when you get that right. But if you don't call it, sometimes we all go through and saying, that could be close. You can say that is close. That's okay. But that could be close. But that you can say too, right? Why do you need to pay me to say that could be close?
Exactly.
So when we are not sure, we tend to sort of sit on the fence a little bit, but that's inevitable. It's a live telecast. The difference between a live telecast and what we're doing now, which is a recorded telecast, is the difference between a fighter pilot and someone who's flying a Dreamliner.
Yeah.
When you're flying a Dreamliner, everything is correct. The livery's got to be right. The food's got to be right. The greeting's got to be right. The plane's got to go a certain way. The sound's got to be right. The setup is perfect. If you get it wrong, you do it again. When you're doing live, you will make mistakes as you go along, because as my mother used to tell us when you were growing up, to be careful with words. Once the word leaves you, it's like an arrow that's left. You can't pull it back unless it's a serial with special effects. You're pulling it back. So you will make mistakes, and sometimes suddenly the backdrop won't be great. Sometimes little things go wrong, but it's live. And you understand that in live, that's what happens. So we are fighter pilots.
I'll take the fighter pilot analogy with the Dreamliner a little further, because what is live is live. But these days, what is live can also be preserved for posterity, put online 800,000 times with how did Harsha make that mistake? How do you navigate through that kind of pressure? And just like the stock market, it's a zero-sum game, right? Someone wins, someone loses. There's one section of the audience who's always going to be unhappy.
The easiest decisions to take are the ones you don't have to take. So if a captain changes the ball, has a new bowler bowling, the easiest thing is to say, usko kyun diya, isko dena chahiye tha. Because you don't have to take that decision is the easiest one to take. Because you don't have to do commentary on a high pressure situation, it is the easiest thing in the world to do. And say, how did he get it wrong? There's a million things going on in your head. Typically, the best thing to do is call the action. Just pause for a little while, though that's going out of fashion, and then build up to create the excitement. But we've got to build the excitement increasingly, because the commentator is no longer just a voice. There is that comcam, as we call it, which is filming it, and more on social media, you're using that. So I hope we don't get to a stage where commentators start enacting commentary. It's happening.
I'm sure a lot of people are doing it.
It's not something I'm very pleased about, because your primary job is to tell the story of what is happening in front, not how you tell the story or how you're dressed to tell the story or how you're just enacting that situation. No, your job is to tell the story. So tell the story. If it looks good on Comcam, it looks good on Comcam. It's okay. But I fear a day will come when commentators will start enacting commentary.
The day is not too far,
And
given
I
the
think
sort
it's
of
here.
videos that
In
are
some
there.
cases, it's here.
It's here. Speaking about the moment, how aware are you of that moment, in that moment, about the posterity of that moment?
You have
Case
to be.
in point, it is Sachin's retirement. It's not going to come back again. But at the same time, you have to stay true to what is happening on the ground. How do you manage that? How do you measure your words with the gravity of the situation at that point in time?
You let your instincts take over, but you're constantly aware. If you are providing the voice, as I was very privileged to be able to do on Sachin's last, on the 20 minutes, 25 minutes there, is to be acutely aware that this is all about the pictures. Your voice is a little accompaniment to the emotion of the picture. Don't screw up that moment. Don't spoil the moment by making it about you. It is not about you, it is about him. And the soundtrack can never dominate the visual. So you just stay in the background. I realized that the pictures were so powerful that there was no point in describing the pictures because the picture is telling a story better than words could ever tell you. So you'll realize it as you watch that again, if you ever do, please,
Multiple times.
that there are lots of pauses. What the pauses were also allowing me to do was let my emotion come down a little bit and to remember the stories because I was the satellite to Tendulkar's solar system. Our career started little around the same time, and because Tendulkar was a star, people started the soundtrack that accompanied Tendulkar's stardom got noticed too. So we were in effect the satellites glowing, reflecting the light of Tendulkar. So as a result, I'd seen him for a long time. So I knew what was happening, but that was still a little easier than say what's now called 18.5.
Yeah, exactly. You led me up to that. I don't know whether there was a plan or not, because Kohli
No,
goes,
I've been in your chair a few times.
Kohli goes down the ground. Kohli goes out of the ground. Talk me through that.
The 3 or 4 pieces of commentary that I'm proudest of. This is definitely one of those, and without doubt, the most difficult commentary stint that I've ever done in my life. Because here is a game that's almost gone. It's an India-Pakistan game. The emotion behind an India-Pakistan game, nobody is watching it rationally. I remember Peter Drury telling me we have to remain rational in spite of the fact that the audience is always irrational. So how do you stay rational when you know everybody is watching it irrationally? The same commentary clip is going out to India. It's going out to Pakistan. It's going out all over the world. Everybody. This is the most watched clip. And the game is almost gone and it starts to turn around.
Yeah.
And you've got to be in that moment. But when Kohli plays that shot, I say Kohli goes down the ground because I have no idea that ball's going for 6, because that shot does not go for 6. It's very, very rare that a player has the skill to play that shot for a 6. So I don't know it's going for a 6. If he plays this one, which he does on 18.6, you can see as soon as it hit the bat that it's probably going for 6. 18.5, anybody tells you they knew that it's going for a 6, they're either high on something or they're lying. So that is why the first line is Kohli goes down the ground, and then suddenly there's amazement in my own voice. I said, that went out of the ground. So hence Kohli goes out of the ground, but I was just reacting to the situation. Then there's a second 6, and the game is not over yet. So I cannot, for example, say, yeah, man, Kohli, you're the dude, you're the biggest, you're the superstar, you're smashing them, man, which a major part of my audience wants me to say.
Yes.
But I cannot, because I will look incredibly stupid if then he gets out in the next over and India lose that game by 4 runs. So I have to stay in the moment. My audience expects me to do something which I cannot do. Now remember, my responsibility as a world feed broadcaster is this game is being watched in Pakistan too. Now if I say, yeah man, Kohli, you're the greatest, you did this. What about those guys? Would you like it if a Pakistani commentator responded to, say, Babar hitting Bumrah for 6 and saying, hey, Bumrah, what are you, man? This is Babar. We won't like it. So I've got to keep that in mind. Then you come to the commentary that I actually enjoyed a little bit more, which was What are you doing, Nawaz?
Yes.
When the ball misses the leg stump. Incredible presence of mind from Ravichandran Ashwin. Who leaves a ball at that stage? Who leaves a ball? Can you imagine the extraordinary composure in his mind? If he leaves the ball and it nicks the pad, you're looking like the biggest, the most stupid person on the planet. Then, when the match is over, I had only thought of one line. I said, if India win and Kohli takes us through, this is the line that might make sense, but I cannot keep thinking of the line because then I'm going ahead of myself. So the line I had in my mind was, these are the kind of innings, Virat, that take you from the present into legend. I say it after the game is over. I cannot say it while the game is on. Can you imagine? I'm saying, this is the kind of innings, Virat, that makes you a legend. Boom, next ball, top edge, out. And he's like, hey, I can't lie. So that gets lost in the clip. Now, you asked me about commentary, doing commentary for clips. In the clip, you get a bit of commentary. When the game ends, you get that. When Kohli is walking back, I said, these are the kind of innings, Virat, that take you from the present into the legend. That doesn't make the clip, but that is the line that I was most satisfied.
You've also gotten trolled for that.
More than I've ever been in my life, because one of the realities of life is that there are troll armies these days, and if people don't like you, you could be alert, you could be the greatest broadcaster the game has ever seen, but if people don't like you, they will find ways of saying that is bad. We're seeing at the moment on social media, if you say, wow, Rohit, there's an army of people who say nasty things about Rohit Sharma. To some extent, if you say, wow, Virat, there's an army of people going after Virat. And this is extremely unhealthy, not just for cricket, but it's very unhealthy for society. Can you imagine what a terrible, terrible way to live life that is purposeless, sad, angry? We only live once, and yet there's so many people who want to do that. I feel sorry for them.
The four that has been hit, your line cannot be longer than the video
Yeah.
that will go on clips. So how do you adjust your lines to those?
Your line has to be short enough when you're calling it. When you're doing it on radio, your line can be beautifully evocative. You can take a minute to go into it because it's not linked to a certain picture. On TV, it has to be. And, it reminded me of, there was a lit fest I went to many years ago, and Gulzar Saab was going to be on it. And Swanan Kirkere, whom I'd got to know, was also on it. And I was interested to see a very talented younger lyricist chatting with one of the legends. And Gulzar started talking about his great song from Bandini, Mora Gora Rang Laile, Mohe Sham Rang De De. And Swanan then said, Gulzar साहब आप बुरा ना माने, लेकिन हमारी लाइन जो है वो ना रिंगटोन में आ सकती है. ये देखते हैं हम कि मैं एक लाइन लिखूं जो रिंगटोन में जाए. तो मैं आज मोहा गोरा रंग दे, मैं नहीं लिख सकता आज उस सिचुएशन में. ये फर्क पड़ा है. अब हम लिख रहे हैं और उसमें. And I suddenly thought, that's exactly what we're doing with our clips. You listen to all the great commentators of the past, and they're these great power of words and whatever. But I'm saying, I've got 6. I've got 6 words. I've got maybe 8 words. And I've got to be in that moment in those 8 words. So that's how things are changing.
How has Harsha Bhogle's commentary, according to you, evolved?
It is inevitable that it will evolve. Typically, it has to do with growing confidence. The growing confidence will reflect in the manner you speak, the manner you pause. A lot of people of my generation were told that people from England or Australia are better than you. And so you wanted to be like them. And so you'll find that everybody of my generation or slightly before would have had a little accent that you thought was a smart accent to have. In course of time, you realize I'm fine as I am, And so you'll find in my work that the accent changes as you go along. The speed changes because when you're not confident, you speak very fast. It's like a batter who's afraid of the ball, of the fast bowler, plays too many shots because he's not sure of his defense. The pauses arrive. As you get older, your voice deepens a little bit. It'll happen to you as well. As you get older, the voice deepens. So then you can play your voice a little bit more. So that happens. When you start to own the pause, as the great Richie Beno said, you do that. But commentary is very different from hosting. For a long time, I was a host who did commentary. And the challenges of a host are vastly, vastly, vastly different from the challenges of a commentator.
You say that you were basking in the reflected glory of people like Sachin Tendulkar, Rahul Dravid, Saurav Ganguly, the big five as they call
The
them,
greatest
the
broadcasting time of
greatest
my life.
broadcasting time of your life. Now you will have a Rohit retiring, you will have a Virat retiring, you will have a Dhoni retiring from the IPL. How will your perspective for that change versus the perspective of Sachin? Because there is
Yeah.
that difference, right? How will you call that versus this?
The relationship will be different. The individual relationship will be different. For example, I had been to Sachin's son's first birthday. I've been to Sachin's wedding. I've gone to Hyderabad to VVS Lakshman's wedding. I've been at a restaurant where Anil Kumble paid the bill. You always remember these things. Who pays the bill? I've been at a restaurant. Lovely, lovely, dignified man. So there are these relationships that you've built and a trust that they had in you that some things will never come out. There was no clickbait. There was no desire to be the story that will be everywhere. So trust remained. With the younger players, I don't have the same relationship because I cannot have.
Yeah.
They were not born when I started. So it's very different. I found myself once in a presentation saying, "Aao bete." And my producer said, "Kya kaha tum kaan mein? Aapne bete bola." And I can't respond to him. I said afterwards, he's younger than my son. I said, "Main kya kahunga? Ayarchi aiye." But that happens without you realizing, "Aao bete, aao." Or you put an arm around them.
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful not to talk down to them, but the emotion is very different when these are much younger players. And I just love watching. You know, the tide always comes in, Mangalam. The one thing you see from the elements is the tide always comes in. So Tendulkar was there, the tide came in. Virat Kohli came in. MS Dhoni came in. The tide went out, as it always does. It will for all of us too. That Tendulkar went out, Rahul Dravid went out, Rohit Sharma came in, Virat Kohli went in. That tide will go out. Shubman Gill is in. Remember, we are still talking batters. See how conditioned we are. Anil Kumble came in, Ravichandran Ashwin came in, Jadeja came in. Slowly, that tide will go out too. And even in your profession, as you get older, you must be acutely aware that one day the tide will take you out as well.
So how do you then stay relevant?
The biggest challenge is to stay relevant. And it happened to me once. I was doing some work in a studio in Sony. And when I grew up, music was a big, Hindi film music was a big part of our lives. So I was surrounded by people. As soon as a song began, we would say, "Ye Madan Mohan ka hai, ye S.D. Burman ka hai, ye O.P. Nayyar ka hai." So we could recognize as you went along. So that was the upbringing. And someone played a cover drive. I don't remember who it was. And I said, "Wow, aisa laga jaise Manna De ne sahi sur pakda." And I looked around. People have no idea of Manna De, which is sad in itself. That told me two things. It told me, better stay relevant. This is a different era. And two, it said, if people don't remember a Manna De or Rafi, what are you, man? So one day people are going to forget you as well. But you have to stay relevant in your metaphors. You've got to stay relevant with changing tastes and preferences. So for example, I just did a blog where I said, I wish younger players were not given that much money in their hands, but maybe part of the money was kept aside for when they retire. So it's there. They've not burnt it all out, and they won't get spoiled by money. It's such a my generation thought. And it's a clip I'm going to put out on my YouTube channel, actually. Let people have a laugh at it. But people will say, so what? This is the moment, right? Enjoy the money. So you've got to be aware, and you've got to stay relevant. And I think that's also part of the reason why I stopped anchoring too, because I think it's time for younger people to do anchoring. If senior people don't move out, how will younger people get breaks? But that was far more difficult than commentary. I mean, I remember a day India playing Pakistan at Adelaide, 2015. It's a 2-hour pre-show. It's hot. At the end of 1 hour, the crowd starts to come in, but the music starts. And the giant speakers are next to you. For the next 1 hour, I have not heard a word of what the two panelists next to me are saying. So then you keep jamming your earpiece in. Then when no one's watching, you quickly turn the volume up behind you. You've got to know your equipment.
Yes.
Inside out, you've got to know your equipment. So while trying to turn up the volume, you cannot switch the channel.
Yeah.
Behind you. So you've got to turn the volume up, turn that, hoping you can hear something. You still can't. Then the understanding with the producer is, if I can't hear you, you follow me. Most times I will follow you, but if I'm not following you, it means I can't hear you.
That's assuming the connection's on. What if the connection's not on?
These days, most times the connections are on, but there were days when the connections were off. But you've got to, it happens to you.
Yeah.
when you've been an anchor for a while, that your instinct becomes very sharp for what to say and what not to say. And if engineering fails, sometimes you don't mind it. Because if everything is going smoothly, what's the difference between you as an anchor and somebody else? It's when you have a difficult exam that you look better, right,
So
than the other person.
The batter comes out well
On a
if it's a
bad pitch.
difficult pitch.
40 on a bad pitch gives far more satisfaction than 95 on a good pitch. So I'll just end with this one little story. We are in England. It's the World Cup. English producers require you to do a full rehearsal. In India, I had hardly ever in all these years done a rehearsal. So we'd done this rehearsal where I'm doing a walkie and I'm setting the scene and I'm walking, ding, 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 ding. I walk, I turn around, there is the spider cam there. The spider cam starts its move. It goes right over my head and goes boom. Mark Nicholas is doing the toss. And it's a beautiful fluid move. I love spider cams. They give you such beautiful fluid movements on a live telecast. And it's over. I'm about to start my move and my ear goes blank. And I've realized by instinct, audio's dead. And so I will not be able to hear my director for that much longer. Luckily, I counted the steps to when I had to go left, because you can't make a mark. If you make a mark, you're looking down. When you look down, you've lost contact with the camera. So I knew I had to walk 12 steps and get my line done in 12 steps, turn around, spider cam, the spider cam starts to move. When the spider cam crosses my head is when I start my throw to Mark Nicholas. So luckily we had done a rehearsal and I couldn't hear the audio at all, but I knew, okay, 12 steps. So in my mind, I'm not thinking line, I'm thinking 12 steps. 12 steps, stop, turn, right. Spider cam is there. Now the spider cam should start moving. Yes, the spider cam started moving. Okay, now I can start thinking, whatever. Now it's come to my head level. It's time to go across to the center, but you always give a little more time should something go wrong. So in the rehearsal, I said, it's time to go to the center. Mark Nicholas is with the two captains. I said, but there's no audio. What if something goes wrong? So you add on 4 or 5 more words just to give the producer that little bit of flexibility, and then you go there. So with instinct you get these days. Most times on these days you fail. Sometimes it works.
Tell me some more tricks of trade.
Relationship between the anchor and the producer has to be very, very close. So for example, I was told in my ear, Hansi Cronje has died. We need to break the news. We are on air in the West Indies.
Yeah.
And suddenly the director tells me, just listen for a minute, okay? Hansi Cronje has passed away. We need to tell this. And I've ignored him completely. And I've just gone on. He says, listen, Hansi Cronje is, I've ignored him. I've gone on. He says, what happened? You don't want to say. As soon as, so by instinct, you know when you're not on camera.
Yeah.
It's just an instinct. You have it too. Everyone who's been in it for a while has it. You know you're not on camera. And you just do that. And then as soon as I saw the single, I said, nahi. And I said, nahi, this. And I came back. It wasn't in the rundown. And I said, right, we'll take a break back in just a moment. There's a lovely game that we are building up to. Then I said in the break, I've been on air once when we called someone who was dead. We called someone as having died and the person hadn't died. I said, I don't want to make that mistake again. Luckily that day I didn't make the mistake. My colleague did. He said, we got news that Abid Ali had passed away. Okay. Childhood hero of mine from Hyderabad. And Farooq Engineer next to me said, he was my colleague. I'll talk about him. And he said, oh, man. And then after we got a call saying, his relative has just called saying, what are you guys saying? He's fine. So I said, I'm not going there till we are doubly sure. And I said, call Alan Wilkins. He's got friends in South Africa. Get him to check with this and know it's absolutely true. By then, they're saying, hello, welcome back. And then I hear in my voice, double checked, yes, it's happened. And then you change your tone and say he's passed away. But that comes with the instinct. And that comes with having made a mistake before. Mistakes are allowed. Mistakes are not, you can't repeat mistakes, but the mistakes are allowed.
Here's a person who always wants to hog a lot of airtime. You defined a caller, a person who summarizes, but there are people who would always want to be the story. How do you deal with that?
I had no clue that Shane Warne and Adam Gilchrist in their playing careers didn't get along. And I asked Warne once about it when I found out. He said, when you cross the line, then you respect each other. You may not like each other. They don't have to send each other cards, as they said. They don't have to go out for dinner together. So you realize that ultimately, it is not about you, it is about the telecast. If I have friction with somebody, and it could be that you don't like somebody, that person doesn't like you. It could just be that that person's in a really crabby mood today. It's not the person that you knew. But if I start to react to the way I think about that person, I'm being unfair to the telecast. The people watching at home do not need to know whether I like Mangalam or I don't like him. They shouldn't have to worry about that. What are they worried about? Are the two of us between us giving you the right picture? And that is the only thing that matters. I remember once saying that it was too hot, complaining how
Yes.
hot it was. And as soon as we came out, Ian Chappell tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Mate, would you mind?" He didn't say, "Don't ever say that." He said, "Would you mind if I said something?" I said, "Yeah, of course." He said, "Kerry Packer would have called you during the telecast and said, I don't care if it's 0 degrees or 50 degrees, or I don't care if you're sweating or whatever. I'm paying you to tell people what is happening." So if you have friction with somebody, you never ever never let that appear on a telecast.
And that brings me to the second part of the previous story, which is fact checking. That seems to be absent from a lot of the journalism slash content that is put out.
You're leading me into something. I worry a lot, man. I worry a lot about clickbait journalism. I worry a lot about not being 100% certain of your facts. On a broadcast, we are very, very lucky. We have very high caliber stats people with us whose job it is to check the facts before they go out. And I learned very early in my career, if you're wrong, don't try to cover it up. Say, "I'm sorry, viewers, listeners, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. This is not what it was, this is what it is." But I worry when journalists' careers are determined by the likes they get, by likes they don't get. The stories are determined by social media likes, and so I worry about that sometimes. And I hope the day never ever comes when a journalist is judged by the kind of likes a story got. I can understand a breaking news story, but if you put out a story saying Mangalam gets trolled by Bhogle on program, rips him to shreds on this program, and then they will search for social media responses that go with what they want to say. You'll get someone with 2 likes, with 2 followers, 4 followers, 6 followers, or you might have created those followers yourself, and then you put out the story and say, "Oh, Mangalam gets trolled by Bhogle." If your editor, if your boss is looking at that and making a judgment on you, then I have a serious problem with that boss.
So if you were to start a media company, you are definitely not judging the quality of a story by the number of likes and dislikes they get.
I hope that never happens. If I ever run a media entity, I will judge a journalist by his or her commitment to the story. And I mentioned her. I love women's cricket. But anyway,
Just before we let you go, this place is ITC Grand Central's point of view. So I'd like your point of view on a couple of small things that I noted down. Future of cricket.
very, very healthy, growing all over the world, driven by the shortest form of the game, which will allow the longest form of the game to stay alive. But in how many countries? I don't know.
Is there a formula to be a good commentator, host?
No, but there are qualities that will help you. You have to love your sport. You have to love the medium and understand the medium. You have to respect the people around you. The sound recordist is as much of a specialist as you facing the camera are. Respect them. And more than anything else, if there's one quality an anchor must have, it is humility. The one quality, because it gives you strength. Humility is very, very powerful. It allows you to get better.
Some of your favorite lines that did not make it to that list which keeps going around the world every second day.
I don't know, because I don't remember lines 30 seconds after I've spoken them. I don't remember them at all. So at the end, someone says, "You remember that?" So, "Oh, no, I don't. I don't remember the lines after I've said them." There have been days when I've done a 1 hour telecast and I can't remember a single line. I've had a journalist once come up to me and say, "Yeah, what did Gavaskar and Shastri say on this?" I said, "I don't remember." And they said, "You don't want to tell me. What is this, man?" I said, "No, I don't remember," because there was so much happening from engineering. My mind was so focused on what is on my rundown, what is coming right, is the VT coming right, am I going to throw to a break, can I hear the producer, am my throws right, that I don't remember what they said.
You know, one of my favorite lines of yours, I'm not sure whether you remember them or not,
Probably won't.
is one of Dhoni's stumpings in, I think, the last IPL final. And you said that he didn't even grab the ball. He said to the ball that, "I'll pick you up on the way."
Yeah.
So I guess
I might have said it. I might have said it, but Dhoni tends to draw good lines out of you without you realizing it.
point of view on Dhoni's retirement, impending retirement.
I I seem to be asking him that every year.
Exactly.
And now he comes ready with answers knowing I'm going to ask him that. I'm hoping to do one more conversation with him because for some reason people seem to like it. And normally post-match presentations, you're very crisp, 3 questions, 4 questions. I found when I'm doing Dhoni, nobody asked me to stop.
Because
You don't have a
everyone
voice
wants to
producer
listen to
telling you,
Dhoni.
okay, that's it, that's enough. Sometimes they'll tell you, last question. So you say, okay. But with Dhoni, it doesn't seem to happen. And Dhoni is so much more relaxed. And yet, I do not know Dhoni at all. Socially, I do not know him at all. We've had a meal together once. I've never had a phone conversation with him. I have never met him outside a cricket ground. I only met him once. I don't know him at all.
I think that seems to be the case with everyone who's ever worked around Dhoni, right? They think of him as an enigma who just joins.
It is his great
for-
strength. It is his great strength that he's not obsessed with the outcome. When you're not afraid of losing, you win more. When you're afraid of losing, you lose.
You've increasingly done a lot of stuff outside of cricket as well.
On podcasts, I would love to. There's two or three things I want to do still. In broadcasting, I have no more goals left. I only have one goal left in broadcasting, which is I'd like to call India winning a World Cup at some point. But I've made peace with the fact that that may not happen. So I have no more cricket broadcasting
There
goals.
is a T20 World Cup, which is
If it happens, it happens. If
Okay.
it happens, I'll be very happy. I will remind myself to stay in the moment and not say, this is something you waited 30 years for. But I will remember to stay in the moment if it does happen.
Does it personally hurt you when Team India loses the way it did in the World Cup when you're calling?
Not at all. It was a cricket match. No one died. It was a cricket match. Yeah, there's emotions. You get disappointed. Your loved ones are still next to you. The sun still rises the next day. Stocks are still doing well most days. Economy is still doing well. It was a game. The other team has a right to play well on the big day. You ask yourself, why did that happen? But that's the topic of another discussion.
So-
but as I said, if you're afraid of losing, you tend to lose more.
So you said broadcasting, that's your goal. The other goals that you have?
I want to do much more in audio. I'm far, far more comfortable doing audio than video, which might seem strange to people, but I've never seen myself as a natural on video. But in audio, I'm so much surer of myself. And that is why one of the 4 or 5 proudest things I've ever done in life was the Mission ISRO podcast, because we were able to tell the story of beautiful movement. I related to it because when we were growing up, scientists were heroes. In a new India that was emerging under Jawaharlal Nehru, I'll get trolled for this again, but Jawaharlal Nehru was a lover of science, was a hero for my father. So we also grew up making them heroes, but Vikram Sarabhai was a hero. Homi Bhabha was a hero. So when I was talking about narrating, I was narrating the story of India's space movement. I was going back to my father and the sense of pride of a deprived, looted country. We should never ever forget that we're a looted country. Looted country, looted of wealth and looted of self-confidence, was finding its way amidst in a new India and was still producing these wow people. I found it deeply emotional, and that was the best piece of writing for reading that I have ever come across. So I'd love to do some more stories on science. I'd love to do more stories on things like that, just to be able to narrate. But all you people who commission podcasts, you're only commissioning real crime podcasts. Who's going to commission these stories on science and development ever? And I'd love to read to the blind. It's the one area that I'm dread of, that one day I won't have eyesight. So I want to read more to the blind once I dilute my cricket commitments.
That brings me to my final question. You had said that Peter Roebuck describes himself as a lover of cricket and a lover of the English
His
language.
twin loves, yes.
He married the two and made a career out of that.
Yes.
I get a sense that you're a lover of music and sport and so many other things.
Yes.
What would you...
I would love to do podcasts on music. I'd love to do podcasts on mathematics. I'd love to do podcasts on science. When we were growing up, science, you had to be good at science, man. And everything in life was explained by science. You had to be good at science and mathematics. So I'd love to be able to do podcasts. I don't like it when people say, yaar, wo na, mera maths harakat kharab tha. I said, kyun? If you have something inside you that doesn't allow you to learn numbers, that's fine. You're dyslexic, whatever, I find now. But it's fashionable to say I was bad at mathematics. Why? You can be good at mathematics, just as I hate people say I was bad at school. It's not a badge of honor. I was bad at school. If I was bad at school, I'd hide in one corner and say I was not good enough at school. So I'd like to do a lot more of that if there's enough people commissioning it. That's not something that I will do for an income. That's something I'll do for passion.
Thus spoketh the man who has an engineering degree and a management degree from IIM Ahmedabad. You speak about the world of cricket, eventually end up
There's much
at
more.
school.
No? Cricket is a tiny part of. Have you seen that there's a series called Cosmos by Carl Sagan when we were growing up. And then sometimes on video or on Twitter, you'll see these things about the solar system, and then it keep moving back and back and back and back and back and back. And the Earth is a little pinprick somewhere in the giant solar system. Cricket is not only a pinprick, but cricket is a tiny part of our world. It's not the only thing in our world.
You know, the first thing that I ever said on any interview that I did with you was, what cricket do they know? Cricket who only know. The great CLR James. And I think it's only full circle that I ended on that.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.